drugs. They're pumping the foot.
Hey, it's probably the fentanyl and the opioid that
they shoot up and then.
Yeah, they probably do kind of get them a little bit.
It's
just to even go in the ring.
Yeah.
Well.
All right.
Whew.
All right. Yeah. So keep going. No, this is the kind of conversation that I want.
Okay.
All right. After way too long a setup time trying to figure this
we
out.
are present.
Now we're done.
Now we're done. Audio podcast over.
Okay.
All right. Welcome to Easy Wake. So this is our first day in this new studio.
Wow.
Camera angles might change a little bit. But we're here today with Brian Somerville. Yes, Brian Somerville. We previously shot an episode. We were doing one of the car episodes. But unfortunately, the recording device that we had didn't match up with the audio. The video didn't match up with the audio, so there was an issue. We had to scrap it. It was a beautiful thunderstorm. Maybe we can get some of that footage in here. We'll figure that out.
It was an awesome interview, wasn't it?
It was. There was this big old flood that came through. Yeah. Oh, I gotta be talking to my microphone here.
And I remember you shot me the little audio with me waving my arms, and it made
It was pretty good.
I was waiting for the end product after that.
No, it was pretty good. It was pretty good. Let me try
Well,
to move
Brian
this over a little bit.
are you
No,
stopping?
go ahead. Do the intro.
Okay.
Do the intro.
Yeah. So Brian, we're so fortunate to have him here today. He is an entrepreneur. He is the CEO and founder of Energy Analyst. And what Energy Analyst does is it helps businesses, government, nonprofit, and our community save money on their energy bills. What could be better than that, right? He's also a yogi. He is a recovering addict. And I just can't wait to hear what Brian has to share with us.
There's a lot in there. Yogi, consultants. Yeah. So, all right. So what do you want to talk about first? What's your shtick?
So many choices. Many choices. You know, I think I want to talk about the recovering addict part. And let's talk about recovery. You know, I always say that's the ultimate before and after story. Mm-hmm. You know, I brought my before story.
Let's see it. You got a fun.
I brought my before story. You know, and I don't know if the camera's capturing it properly, but you know, my before story. Picture's worth 1,000 words, and the serious man in that image. I don't know if the eyes are fully captured, but I'll adopt that physiology maybe for a moment.
We'll see if we can get a nice shot of that there. There we go.
So that's that beats my heart, being able to carry a message of compulsion and obsession obviously are impacting everybody in this country, but those who end up with their compulsion and obsession being controlled substances and intense drugs, a lot of them are dying today. As I was sharing with you before we began, one of the things that when I'm speaking to people in recovery, I do a lot of I spend a lot of time going into hospitals and institutions carrying the message of recovery, 12-step recovery, to addicts who are at a pivotal point. They're they're in a treatment center. For some reason, they're there. Usually, when I ask them, they say they want help and they want to pivot and change their life from active addiction to recovering addict. And I always want to capture in carrying a message to them. At some point in time, I want to bring back the seriousness of it, and I will ask how many who are hearing this message know somebody who's died from a drug overdose. And I don't know the audience that's hearing your podcast, but I know in a treatment center it's almost 100%. And usually while their hand's in there, I'll ask them to keep their hand in there. I said, but how many of you know somebody who you cared about, somebody who was special to you, who died? And usually in a treatment center, that's 80% plus. Somebody they cared about and know has left the planet because they took some drugs that didn't allow them to continue their life.
Yeah.
And when you did that to yourself and been blessed enough to make it through, it's a great opportunity to pass on some tools, because the process of not doing drugs, the process of not doing whatever is looping you and bringing you back that you keep doing is a process and is a skill developed over time.
Okay. All right. So I don't know what kind of got you. You spent a lot of years as an addict. You were going through some serious issues, right?
Ooh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I want to go a little bit into that as well. Well, I guess let's go into that first. I was going to ask what led you to, talking about this, to want to help people out. But let's go to the backstory. Let's get to the juicy stuff.
Okay. I was introduced as an entrepreneur first, and an entrepreneur and hardcore active drug addict kind of happened to begin at the same moment in time, ironically, in that I had followed a path to achieve a professional occupation. I went to school. I got a bachelor's degree in accounting. I had passed licensing exams to become a CPA.
Yeah.
And I had made a decision early in my professional career to carve out this energy analyst niche. And the day I was going into business, I was going into business at the beginning of a year, January 1 of 85. I got introduced to a substance we now call crack cocaine. Back then we called it freebase cocaine. On December 31st of 1984. So freebase
sounds so much lighter. It doesn't sound so bad. Yeah.
It was a chemistry
It
was a chemistry experiment. We had ether. It was
crack sounds intense.
Yeah.
You've cracked.
Yeah.
Ooh. Hey, I know that journey began at the same time. I actually. And I know that first, I think I made a 15-month run back there then until it got to the point where it was a call to action by loved ones, people who cared about me, and they ran an intervention on me 15 months into that process. And, I remember when that intervention was run, I was given an option of being institutionalized or going into a drug treatment center. And it was a no-brainer. Institutions back then were scary. People would come out and never be the same. So,
lobotomized.
Yeah, lobotomized. Lithium, whatever. I remember when the question was posed to me, you're either going to do A or B. It was a no-brainer. Let's go to the treatment center. But what they forgot, and maybe I didn't think of until the next day, was I was an adult.
Yeah.
And the treatment center had lighter rules than I'm sure they would have formally tied me down at the institution. But at the treatment center, I had the freedom to sign myself out on day 2.
What?
So you signed yourself out?
Yeah, my initial treatment went one day, and I remember.
Oh my goodness!
I remember the rebel without a cause.
I can do it one day.
Yeah, the rebel without a cause had been given a cause.
Yeah.
Out of control. You want to see out of control? So decadence take 1. And I was off. I mean, I was on a mission at that point. I was I'd been offended by the intervention, the your life, your choice, A or B. And I was
showed them, right?
Oh, I was propelled into a.
I'll go to the treatment. I'll get out in one day. I'm done.
hand them the treatment tools. Oh, you let us know when you're fixed. I'm good. I'm not addicted anymore.
Yeah, so that began quite a run. I remember, and it was interesting because my early experiences with that substance, cocaine, and smoking cocaine was it would amplify my mental energy. And I don't know if anybody has seen the movie Limitless.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Okay, so picture Limitless. That was me early on cocaine. Okay. I'm real analytical, and that part of my mind can really run. And I remember, this was back really early in computer technology. I had the pleasure of being mentored and learning spreadsheets, which were brand new then. Yeah. And I had recruited some college roommates to be my early employees and energy analyst. And I would be going crazy at the end of the day because they were like, what do I do next? Brian. They'd be calling me over to help them on their keyboards and manipulating this spreadsheet. And I remember when they left, I did a bunch of lines and did some cocaine, and I was like, oh, and I got the computer to talk to itself. So I programmed the computer to talk to itself, all wired up on the altered state.
A card.
And that I was propelled on a journey, and I always thought my problem is these people up my butt trying to tell me how to live my life. And can you believe it? They almost had me institutionalized last week. So I didn't have a problem in my own eyes, but the entrepreneur in me saw a heck of an opportunity. And I remember at that very intervention I described, I was trying to change the path. Okay, I have a problem, but can we talk about this epidemic that's about to hit the country? They just put into smoking form a needle. Yeah, they put recreational guys like me who smoked marijuana and maybe drank a little. Yeah. Now they can smoke something that will hook them like a needle. And I wasn't very altruistic at the time. I was seeing dollars. Like, do you know how much they'll pay to rehab people? So my call to action was unheard, and it was, okay, Brian, A or B, institution. And I went on that path, and I recognized that it was starting to interfere with my ability to make money. Oh, okay. And that was a call to action. Yeah, and I huddled up with my brain trust, a guy who was embedded in the 12 steps in more formal treatments that are recognized then and today as successful. Okay. And I came up with a hybrid method. Yeah. I said to my friend Tom, Tom, this freebase, this crack's really got me. But you and I both know my big driver, which usually has me possessed, obsessed, 24/7 pursuing it, is a better, quicker, faster way to make money, and more of it, and more of it, and more of it. So So
what did the money, what did it mean to you? What was, was it the power with the money, the freedom that it gave you? What was it?
It was winning. I was programmed to want to win.
Oh, okay.
And the only game that that seemed to make sense was the money game was the game all the adults play.
Yeah.
I think I shared with you earlier about how my perception skills as a young child, I became atheist, not agnostic, simply because those adults tried to pull that Santa Claus scam on me, and I caught them. And this God story, this Sunday stuff, save it. I've got football to watch and empires to build.
Santa Claus can drive you to crack cocaine.
So at that point, the whole thing about the money here is. Money and power was something I chased, pursued, respected, put up on a pedestal as something really worthy. So I came up with this plan. Listen, this is how we're going to get me off crack. I'm going to commit a bunch of money. I'm going to put it in escrow. Yeah. And if I'll go do this formal 90-day, 180-day I'll go to a 12-step. I'll do whatever you want me to do, but let's try the money thing first. So I put a big sum of money up. Yeah. And I agreed for 90 days I would do no substances, just like the programs. All mood and mind altering substances are off the table of my personal experience.
So you just did it yourself.
I did it with the leverage that if I used, I would have to pay a large sum of money and go in and do the formal program.
Here. Money is the main motivator in this situation. It seems like money is what kind of got you into it, and money kind of helped you to wean yourself off a little bit in these circumstances so far. This is what I'm hearing.
Oh, well, I mean, I don't think I'm isolated in this society. I think people chase money pretty seriously, pretty committed, and
I was gonna say that there's a correlation, I think. Like, if you look at the way that our society's set up, and the more we dive into this, nothing against capitalism, but the more the main and sole drive of our lives is simply to chase after money, the more we run into addiction problems. The more we see, like, these opioid epidemics coming up. I mean, it seems like there's a real tie to that. It almost seems to sort of split you from your sense of morality. And then there's a part of us that's naturally inclined to be moral. We're not born into thinking about money. We're born into wanting, like, love and care from our family members and wanting that connection with other people. So the more we're separated, in society, because you're told, it's hammered down into you. You gotta chase after money. If you don't have money, you got no life. If you don't have money, you're not worth anything.
Yeah, you're a failure.
Exactly.
Right? And nobody wants to be a failure. So that's where that winning and losing comes in. Right? Yeah. I want to be a winner. Who wants to be a loser?
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
and we all want the cliff notes. Well, I want the short story. Exactly. Okay, save the 400-page book. Give me the how-do. Yep. How-to. Give me the what am I going after?
Oh, shit. Hold on a second. Well, you guys can keep going, actually. This camera here, we're going to have to bear with us, folks. We're working on a camera setup with the two.
But we're going to continue to flow with the pursuit and non-pursuit, and using as a leverage tool something that we're powerfully attracted to. Parents do it all the time to their kids. How many parents... How many people hearing this are parents, and how many have taken their smartphone from their child in the last...
parents definitely are using this as leverage.
Oh, yeah.
So I've said, hey, I'm going to get leverage on myself, and I know what leverage on Brian is, and that is I'm chasing power and money, and I'm not doing it just in a kind of hobby way. I'm doing it on a life mission. So
we'll keep going.
So moving in that direction, I put that, and I was huddled up with a guy who was my recovery coach, and he said, no, not just crack, all substances. And on the 90th day, I said, we're going to talk about this again. How do you like my walk of the last 89 days? How do you like the pathway we're on?
Cold turkey.
For 89 days, yes. Wow. And on the 90th day, I did a huddle, and I said, listen, I am all aboard continuing this pathway.
There we go. I think
as far as the crack cocaine goes.
Okay.
But, I don't drink. My other altering state thing is marijuana, and I like marijuana. As a few people who are hearing my voice probably do. So on the 90th day, I reinvented the game. I raised the money stakes because the money works. So I took, I don't remember, it was 5 or 10,000 and upped it to 20 or 30. I upped it to a big enough amount that I wasn't going to move off it. And the police in that case was not just my integrity. It was a guy I was working with who knew all of my dope fiend moves, all of my stuff if I was not congruent. And he could call me on it and make me piss in the cup. And I gave him a financial instead of, look, you catch me lying, you get paid too, the center gets paid, and I go into the formal treatment programs. So it's day 90, the new program begins, and that program ran 13 years.
Okay.
So to give the short version of those 13 years, the entrepreneur, Brian, is back in stride.
Okay.
And I even self-policed myself. I remember I called it the 13th hour rule. I would not go to my marijuana until I've been up 13 hours, because most of my business, most of my doing day, my analytical day is well enough handled that I can go into dream state a little bit, or nod state, or munchy state, whatever that substance does to you.
Yeah.
So Brian, I'm just interested to know. Okay, so you had the money as the driver, and you felt empowered that you could go out there and make money, and that was your kind of focus. You know, that kind of motivated you to give up the drugs. Now, what about somebody sitting out there listening to you, who doesn't really have that motivation? They don't really feel empowered to create money or create anything else. What would you say to that person?
Well, I'm not advocating that leverage method today. I'm advocating for recovery.
No, I like the leverage method.
Well,
I really do. It works. But
she's saying,
I'm saying, what if you hadn't had that drive towards the money? Because there are a lot of people out there who are struggling.
I'm
with
hearing you, and I think I understand it. And at the end of the day, getting leverage works. I mean, we've known that
exactly.
leverage works. So. What is your button? What is the thing that is past your threshold, that anything but that, and put that on the line? You know, put that on the line. And what's the consequence? The consequence is, if you fall, if you don't honor your commitment, then you'll do B. And B might be what everybody else wants you to do as A. At least it's a program. You know, we say now in a more traditional recovery, the 12-step program, they'll tell you that if you're not working that program, don't assume you got no program. We all got our own program. We're all running on some conditioned program.
We have some drive.
Yeah.
Which got us started in the drugs in the first place.
Exactly.
Right. So for you, it was an escape of some sort?
You know, for me, it was a lifestyle. I got introduced to drugs late elementary, early junior high.
Oh. Okay.
And for me, it was not only lifestyle, it became, you know, I was a guy who was always kind of a leader amongst the kids. You know, I was organizing games. We would be playing board games, sports games. I was always a guy who was network with my peers. And I started to get a separation from my peers because I was such a nerdy good student, which, you know, isn't a popular thing with the clique of people. Right. So I started to get separated by that way. You know, it's like the valedictorians, usually the social misfit. and the getting involved with the drugs got me reconnected, because, you know, I'm the kid
who was cool.
Well, it made
you fit in.
Hey, it was my new paper route. You know, I've been saying, you know, I remember chasing money early and having a paper route and having this, and so that became another thing that I could network and distribute and get involved in. So yeah, you know, in my childhood years, I was involved in some illicit activities and networking them. But that reconnected me with a bunch of people where we had a commonality, and I was this resource for them. So that connection became important over time. But I remember getting introduced.
So what was the very first time you did some drugs?
7th grade, I think. 7th grade.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Probably by today's standards,
and that was
old.
Yeah, that was to feel cool. Did it make you feel cool?
I don't remember how it was introduced, but it made me feel different. You know,
made you feel different, but it made you fit in. Did the others accept you?
It made me more comfortable in the present moment. I probably couldn't have phrased it that way or stepped back and recognized it, but it probably turned off this over analyzing everything and anything. I probably had never been in a present moment that I wasn't studying as it was happening.
So it was kind of an escape from your own mind, from your own super busy mind.
Yeah, there we go. I think that's exactly what it was.
Yeah. I'm setting up the battery on the monitor cut out, so I'm going to set up a timer.
Okay.
Let's go 10. You guys we're good to continue. It's still going. So
okay.
This will all be broadcast. We make mistakes here at Easy Awakenings. We're not afraid to admit that.
That's right.
Yeah.
And we will continue to make tons of
Technical
mistakes.
pit
And we're going
stop
to keep on
on the
moving
road.
forward.
Keep on moving forward. I like this angle too here.
Yeah.
That's a lot better. But okay, all right. So I want to know, what kind of kid were you when you were young? Like, what kind of things were you into? So you kind of remind me of. There's a guy named Gary Vaynerchuk. You guys know who he is?
No, I don't.
He's an entrepreneur. Let me pull him up on the computer. I call him a serial entrepreneur. Gary Vaynerchuk.
I think I that part of it I can align with.
Yeah. That's
Okay.
At a young age, he had an intense drive to create a bunch of businesses. He ended up he got wealthy off of his father's wine business, I believe.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Gary, you better watch this podcast.
New York Times best-selling author, speaker, and internet personality. Wow.
Yeah. So it kind of seems like you were driven with the same sort of motivations that he kind of had. He says he never got into drugs or he's not on them now. I don't know, but
I just remember coordinating events. Bringing the kids together to play football, basketball, baseball, and then I remember having the drive. My father, my mom was the active parent, and my dad was a stockbroker who lived and breathed his occupation. Yeah. He would come in at night. He'd be present, but he wasn't, right? He had that table. He sat at that table. He drank his beer. He studied the stock charts, and he was living and breathing, his job as a stockbroker and stock investor.
Sure.
So I remember, I think the first thing I got introduced to that was making money, other than something from mom or dad, was a paper route, and I remember because I was a thin little guy, right? And I remember we had to deliver like 400 papers. It was bigger than me, like the amount of papers. But so I got the paper route. I think it was my brother's route. I'm helping him out in second grade. I remember the entrepreneur in me, my first entrepreneurial venture. I remember it. I think it was third or fourth grade. I got two working parents, a school teaching mom and a stockbroker dad. And I don't know what inspired this promotion, but we had some boxing gloves. That's funny. You mentioned boxing earlier. Yeah. So we had boxing gloves, and we used to box. Mm-hmm. And I came up with this brainstorm. Let's do a boxing event. Mm-hmm. So I held a boxing event in my parents' basement. I sold tickets. We had poles like down here. So we had 3 fights. Yeah. I fought on the opening fight. Mm-hmm. The second fight I helped fix, and in hindsight, the event could have been a liability nightmare for my parents if some kid had got hurt. But that not only serial entrepreneur, but running angles. So the second fight was my now brother-in-law and a lifelong friend were scheduled to fight, and they had sparred a couple days ahead. Yeah, but we had sparred ahead of time.
Okay.
And the one guy beat up the other kid pretty bad. It was mismatch. So Matt comes to me. I can't do it. Yeah. I'm like, hold on a second. I said, look, I already sold the tickets. Listen, you're the second fight. Pete, come over here. So I huddle up Pete and Matt, and I said, Pete, you can't do that to him. And on event day, you just gotta. You're gonna win. You're gonna win, but you can't hurt him like that. You gotta get just. So I coordinate for him to do a big time wrestling, not a real fight or not a fight to the winner.
Sure.
And I remember. The day of the event, last minute, the one of them pulled out, and I was like, Don King's going nuts. What do you mean he pulled out? but I remember we brought in a substitute. All I remember, I had fought in the first fight, and the guy I was fighting had quit in round real early, and his manager just decided to fight. So we were trying to give a show to the kids who bought the tickets. And all I remember is I'm upstairs because this is my parents' basement, and I'm like dousing myself. I'm exhausted. I'm running water on my head, and I hear all this screaming and yelling going on in the basement. There's some exciting stuff had happened. And I ran down there, and Pete, who would have won the fixed fight, had a real opponent. and apparently the other kid had like pounded him for a minute, and then Pete had bloody nosed him, and that was the end of the fight.
we were talking about boxing. And
and the 2 boxers that have died within 1 week.
Yeah,
That's
it's a sport where you're getting hit in the head.
But hey,
your brain can only take.
But to me, it was a successful 20 tickets sold. The event went on.
So how much money did you make?
And I think the ringside seat was 40 cents. The others were a quarter
40
each.
cents.
So, hey, but I had to pay the fighters. I'm sure I took some promoter's share. I don't know, but it was the beginning of a pattern of I can coordinate events, I can put people together, I can coordinate actions, and I can turn it into a money-making activity.
I think the summit.
Yeah.
You know, hey, I remember. So soon after, I got another paper route, and they decided they were going to quit having us deliver them. They were going to mail them, but we would still be the collection. So I went from in second grade, 400 papers, bigger than me, just huge labor. To a couple years later, I've got this streamlined route where I don't even deliver anymore. I just go and collect. So that pattern goes on.
So it's in your blood.
It's in my blood.
To make that money, it's in your genes.
And sometimes
Wow.
No toys as a kid. No hobbies. And my hobby is raising money.
Well, I played chess. I remember playing in a chess tournament. I was like 6 years old. And the making money. I had my grandmother loved the racetrack. I grew up a mile from the DRC racetrack, so I used to. I was spend many afternoons with my grandmother at the Thoroughbred racetrack.
Where is that racetrack?
It used to be at Schoolcraft in Inkster, which is now a Home Depot and Myers, etc.
Where's the other one? There's another one.
Hazel Park was the other.
Yeah. Is that still there, or did they get rid of that?
It might be gone. You know, hey, the DRC.
There's one in Northville, too.
The DRC.
Really, a horse race?
Or I think they might have now closed it.
Yeah,
but,
I've never even heard of that one.
Hey, the DRC is
I think so. I'm not
so
sure.
embedded in my stories, you know, from as a child on grandma's knee, watching. She's out 3 hours early time with her time watch.
So, you're a Detroit native, right?
Yes.
So did you grow up in the city? I want to bring a little bit of Detroit into this. Did you grow up in the city? Did you grow up...
I grew up in Redford, which is Wayne County suburb.
It's Metro. It's Metro
border.
Detroit, folks.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, I am a Detroiter, yeah.
We're a Detroit-based organization. We film in Detroit.
Yeah, so that pattern just continued, and you know, by the time I got through those early experimentation years, the stuff that stuck with me, the more important stuff was the enterprise. I remember I'm at Wayne State. I'm at Wayne State, and I'm a 4.0 top business student, but I'm still doing my distribution in the illicit market.
Yeah.
I'm not consuming because I'm trying to be a 4.0 student. So always these entanglements, and I choose to become a CPA, which is a very conservative profession. Back then, you know, the wingtip shoes, the conservative cut, and at the same point, I'm the extremist. I'm like into punk rock and new wave and the Clash and this and that, and I'm wearing a mohawk and a modified mohawk. But I remember I bombed on all my interviews, campus interviews. I should be getting offers from every large CPA firm in the country because I've got practical work experience. I'm a 4.0 student, but you know, when they got in front of me, I didn't fit the mold.
Well, let me ask you about that. So, what does a guy like you think about like our current educational system? Do you think it's good for students? Do you think it's sort of, you know, does it throw people off? Does it just train zombies to go out in the market?
Oh.
I mean, you've been through hell and back. You've seen the dark side of life, you know, the dark side of addiction. You've seen success in business. I want to get your take on what you think. Because personally, I think a lot of our institutions are outdated.
Oh.
They're meant for, you know, raising, people to jump into factories. It's a factory-based educational system to get you in line, get you into a program where you shut up, go to work, earn your money, don't ask questions, get some sort of, you know, retirement package, and then boom, that's a decent life. But that's not
Your
really,
life is already set for you.
Exactly, it's set for you.
You're going to be in a cog in
exactly.
a wheel.
You're a sheep. They're fatten you up to sort of shave off the wool off your back. So what do you think about the system? That's my take. I'm
very much in alignment with that, and I even look at my own patterns that I ran, and where I did benefit from having the degree allowed me to get my first professional job, which I stayed all of 6 months at.
I gotta reset this camera, but keep talking.
But the reality is, the school system. There's still, you can walk into a classroom. You get pictures of a classroom from 10, 20, 50, 100, 150 years ago. They look like they did then. They're using the same tools. They're not integrating the advancements. And, in a society, they're churning out factory people. They're churning out people with the same skill sets. They're testing and developing. I'm all for continuing to proactively put a lot of space and time into our youth and shaping them and forming them. But the rigidity of the program, the rigidity of the teachings, my mom was a public school teacher, and I remember having a lot of long discussions, debates, where I would tell her that her union was one of the biggest blight to our society because they were so entrenched. There was a movie, a documentary, Waiting for Superman, I think it was called.
Oh, yeah.
A couple years back, and it really went into detail on how difficult it is to create any change within to the teachings and the structure and the unionized school teacher, where they literally would take teachers who were so ineffective they had no other solution other than to put them in a break room all day because they couldn't put them in front of teachers and in front of students anymore. But I think it needs to. I think huge change needs to occur. I think some privatization of it. We're in Michigan, we got charters, and I don't know how rigidly they're required to keep on structure. But then again, I think, what we're doing here, where the tools are out here, it still comes down to people. People need to. I think, and I say this to the younger listeners or to parents as guides and influences. We need to get people hungry for education, hungry for learning more, for more awakening. Because at the end of the day, that we're limiting them during those hours of their school life, but there's, they're seek the streaming TV that we're consuming. We still got a lot of free time that we're not getting on that healthy habit. I know what.
It's an audio sync.
Okay.
Keep going.
It's the creativity that's missing. It's whenever they're short on funds, right?
Yeah.
The first thing they cut is music, or they'll cut,
the
these
arts.
extra, the arts.
Art isn't worth it.
Right? And that's where the creativity happens. It's not just about memorizing and regurgitating a bunch of information.
Right.
Because now Google can do that better than any of us.
Exactly.
No matter how much information we memorize, right? So now what? I mean, now are we going to keep on stuffing these kids' heads with all this information?
I think one of our biggest problems is that creativity is so undervalued in our society. But you think about what really shapes the advances, what shapes the progress of the human species, of society and specifically. It's our creative ability to find new ways to problem solve. And people almost always, anytime you say creativity, what do you think of? A canvas and an art brush, right? Maybe a camera.
And most people say, I'm not creative.
Exactly. It's seen as sort of, fringe edge sort of hobby. It's not meant to be taken seriously unless you somehow fit yourself into the niche of whatever creative endeavor. But creativity goes into everything. You can be a creative scientist. You should be a creative scientist, a creative doctor, a creative businessman, because then you're creating new ways. Look at a guy like Elon Musk. And show me a guy like that with the ideas that he cooks up. That's not creativity rolling around that dude. Oh, I mean, he's extremely creative. I mean, look at Albert Einstein. He was creative. He found ways to explore, the fabric of the universe and discover, gravity, and just all sorts of individuals throughout history that show these examples. The best people who bring us forward are creative.
No question about it.
So it's time we do. And there's always been this debate. Is it STEM or is it STEAM? And I always screw this up. I know STEM is the absence of arts in that, but what is STEM? I know science, mathematics.
Technology.
Yeah, STEM. Technology.
Yeah.
Definition of STEM education. STEM defining as an education world mathematics. I would pull up the one site that's got it listed in 50 paragraphs. All right. What is it? STEM, addition to scientific learning. Science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Engineering, okay. So then, STEAM is arts.
Arts, yeah.
Yep. Science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics. So and there's a debate. Should it be STEAM? Should they include art in this educational process? It's like, why is that a debate? Of course you should include art. That's the expressive part of the mind. Like, no matter if someone's, more left-leaning in their brain and their thinking, or right-leaning, it's still an important factor. Like, you wouldn't want to take mathematics out of your learning system, right? Of course not. No. So why do we want to take art out of that? That's ridiculous. Someone who's a little too much into mathematics or technology or engineering should be introduced into the artistic side to them. It makes us far more well-rounded. It helps to integrate us into society a lot more. It makes us able to communicate. So I think we definitely need to head in that direction.
Absolutely.
Well, awareness. I mean, we have no classroom or curriculum on thinking, studying how are we trained to use our mind, studying awareness versus thought. We can call it meditation, learning fundamental skills about how we use our mind.
Right.
And it's so, I focus a lot of my my energy and research on recovery. And addiction and shame are like so intertwined, but shame, I've been listening and reading from shame researcher Brene Brown, and she talks about one of their findings is the majority of people, when they go back to why they're not creative or what stopped their creative juices, was shame. She leads them, she elicits them to access when did they experience shame in their life? Yeah. And the majority of them come back to some creative project. Maybe they couldn't sing, they sang off key, they couldn't draw. They were told, you're not creative. And they consciously just shut down and quit even trying to be.
So it's those embedded belief systems that we hold based on what some teacher said a long time ago, what your parents said. You're no good at this. So now you really believe that. Right.
And it's embedded, especially at a young age.
At the cellular level. Issues in the tissues.
I like that. We're going to put the issues in the tissues by Raj. I like that. That's
you
good.
know what I mean?
I do.
That's what it is.
We were talking.
We spend the rest of our life like that.
We were talking on a previous. I think we brought this up on a previous episode where it's so funny that we sort of consider the things that happen to us at a young age like, oh, those are just growing pains. You'll get over that. Yeah. But that is the subset of everything that happens to us for the rest of our lives. That's the standard that we're setting. Who are the kind of spouses we go after? The people we are first introduced to as a young age. That becomes the archetypal man or woman that you sort of unconsciously chase after. The same is true for everything that you deal with in your life. How do I respond in this particular situation? Do I drink away my issues? Do I find a substance to cover up my pain, or do I face it? That's all configured. It's all ingrained at those young ages. So much happens to us in our brains
Yes.
before the age of 7. This sets the tone for everything that's going to happen to us, every perception that we have for the rest of our life. And it seems that our society, as people, we tend to look at that like, oh, well, he just acts like this because he's this way.
Right.
Don't pay attention. Don't worry about that. He'll get over that.
He'll outgrow it.
He'll outgrow it.
Yeah.
You know what we outgrow is we don't grow. We shut it off and it dies. Is our curiosity on a lot of stuff. And if you're not curious about
that's
something,
a great word.
if you're not curious about something, anytime you're re-exposed to you won't even take it in. It won't root in you.
Right.
And emotions. I'm talking to a group of 60 men last night. Mm-hmm. And so these are guys in recovery who all tell me I'm ready to walk the walk.
Yeah.
But that walk is go within, get vulnerable,
Yeah.
get all the stuff you were taught is you don't do as a man, as being strong. You got to be willing to open up. And if you have no curiosity about emotional depth, about emotions and how they're impacting you, and it's easy to see physical injury when it manifests that way, where somebody had an amputation or some disfigurement. Yeah. But we are hurting, people. And I learned that from the Yin Yoga, right, where we find that we got all this tension in one area of our body or another. But being able to regenerate people's curiosity, because that's like the seed planting. And we don't realize it, how much of that, if you never had an interest in it, it's really hard to make it take.
So the curiosity about self.
Yes.
Is that what you're talking about? Yeah. It's that curiosity about who am I? Mm-hmm. Now, if I walk up to you and say, who am I? You're going to think I'm crazy. It's like, wait, you don't know who you are, right?
Right.
It's a question that you have to keep asking yourself. It's like a self-inquiry. Every day. Yeah. Every day you're changing. Find out who or what are you identified with.
Exactly. What are you experiencing and why are you experiencing it internally? No, you're right about that.
It's an ongoing inquiry.
And then here's my question: why isn't this stuff taught in schools?
Well, that was our earlier. This evolved from what's being taught. Yeah. And my mind starts running on what should be being taught.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Like you're taught about all kinds of things. There's no introspective education.
And all the memorization is obsoleted by the technology.
Exactly. Google will tell me who I am. Well, why do you think we have so many? It's broadcasted that everyone on these Instagram pages, these influencers, these movie stars, these guys all have perfect lives because they're living the high life. A lot of these folks are the most miserable people you've ever met in your lifetime. Yes. And there's a reason for that. It's not because they're bad people. It's not because they're just living lives of debauchery. Anyone set in that sort of place with that sort of access can easily turn to all sorts of drugs and excess behavior. So it's not that they're evil, but the issue is that we're not educated to take a look inside. Like you said, we're not educated that it's important. Who am I? Why do I do what I do? Why do I think what I think? And that's kind of what we do. That's what we do at Easy Awakenings. That's a plug.
See, if there is even a little ant crawling on you, you can feel it. Yeah. You cannot feel the blood flowing through you. Mm-hmm. You cannot feel the energy flowing through you because we are so dependent on our 5 senses.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's because of that, energy.
And then on top of that, we identify. We identify as like a woman or a man or a doctor or a lawyer or whatever, It's all outward. And I was just reading an article today. Only 1% of the cosmos are material. 1%. 1%. What's the other 99%? And now they're discovering that dark matter, that dark energy. It's not like it's negative energy. It's just called the dark energy. And another way to explain that is it's the unmanifest. Yeah. So we are so focused on the manifest, which is only 1% of everything. That we're not really allowing anything new to come in. Our brains are all like mindful. They say mindful now. Mindfulness. But actually it should be mindlessness. We need to clear our minds.
We do need to
clear our minds.
Exactly. Especially in that.
Let stuff come in.
What you're talking about is it's so crucial because our society, it forces us into a place where we're always worried about something. We're always concerned about what's going to happen next. And what does that do? That puts us into the fight or flight state. And what happens in the fight or flight state? It's like driving on a highway. If you're calm, you relax, you're taking slower speeds, you're able to pay attention to everything that's going around. But in fight or flight state, it's like you're zooming at 100 miles an hour. You don't pay attention to left or right at 100 miles an hour. You're looking at what's directly ahead of me. You're not seeing what's on the sides, what's going to come from behind you. You're like, I'm zooming past. So everything in your life is flying by, and you're not paying attention to the important things. Someone could sideswipe you. You might need to turn left or right. And that's why it's so important to slow your brain down so you can pick up on your environment so that you can see what's really going on. Yeah. You're right about that.
But we're all like multitasking, and research shows that multitasking does not work. It doesn't work.
No,
you're not really that effective,
Right.
But the problem is we're not taught how to concentrate and focus on one thing.
Yeah.
We don't know how to focus. So then, we're just kind of all over the place.
More than ever, that is it's. There should be a public outcry that they need to integrate, and we can talk about focusing with intention or attention, but either way, it's developing a muscle memory or a muscle mind where you control that focus. In this age of distraction, I had not realized till you shared that about the energy part. Why isn't more focus? I'm watching Robbins on Oprah earlier today, and his whole thing was taking all these people who have all this knowledge, all these achievers and knowledge base, but reminding us knowledge without action, and action still. We're not going to get the energy by consuming more knowledge, by consuming more food. I mean, that's something we can control that inner energy, but because we don't see it. In this society, we can say these people are superficial. No, they're just doing what they're trained to do, what they've been conditioned to do. I heard a frame on I think I've heard that we have anywhere from 20 to 80,000 thoughts a day. I think a real important reframe is those aren't my thoughts. Those aren't your thoughts.
Right.
Those are old thoughts. 80% of them have been regurgitated.
Exactly.
And that's
conditioning.
The type of cleansing that needs to happen. Hey, you got a torrent coming every day.
Not only are they old thoughts, but they're repeating themselves throughout the so they're not even new old thoughts. It's the same cycle going over and over and over. And so that just leads you to question, how much of my life am I actually living? How much of this am I actually doing myself? Or how much of it is pre-programmed by not only things that happened in the past, but by other people? And that just like, am I living my own life at that point? And so we wonder about why are we having so many issues? And this is something, for those of you guys that are listening to this, we like to separate there's a difference. People tend to think of things like mental health as it's an illness. Mental health is a spectrum. We all have mental health, right? It's about the state of your mind. And where is it on that spectrum? Are you having complications in your mental health? Do you have stable mental health? Are you, have a really positive, really healthy side to mental health? It's so important. It's so important for us to realize the difference and to understand that we need to take a look at and really pay attention to ourselves, to go inside and understand where do we stand on our own mental health status. So
and and I think what you're like what you're speaking to is this concept that I heard is, you know, like animals, nature is established.
Yeah. Yep,
right?
Yep.
From the time they're born to the time they die, a lion's not like, oh, how can I be a better lion?
Yeah.
He's just a lion, you know? He's just going to eat, he's going to hunt, he's going to do whatever.
Exactly.
Somebody who has transcended the human condition, who we would think of as like divinity or divine,
right?
Their nature is also established.
Yeah.
It's human nature that is not established yet, and one day it can be a saint, the other day it can be a criminal.
Yep.
It can just move. So when you talk about the spectrum,
Yeah.
that's what you're talking about.
Exactly.
It's like, you know, we think of why is mental illness such a stigma?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Why is it such a stigma? I've
we all
never
do.
been able to understand this. Right?
Yeah.
But the mental health, we all, to some degree, in different areas of our life, are mentally healthy, and in other areas, we're not.
I mean, how many of us have been? You've heard someone talking about, oh, this person's a narcissist, or this person's got this, and you're like, man, I got a little bit of that. Am I this? Am I that?
I know when I took abnormal psych in college, I was like, man, I'm a really sick person. Because I would read that book, and I'd be like,
yep.
I think I might have some of these symptoms.
You're going through the DSM, you're like, Professor, I got to be honest, I don't know if I should be taking this.
Right?
I think I've got paranoia.
Yeah, until you realize the whole spectrum.
Exactly. It's all about because there are extreme cases, and that's what mental illness is. It's those extreme fringe cases. But there are still there are parts of that are embedded within us.
Yes.
You know, you took a look at some of the worst monsters in history. There's a part of that in every one of us. You know, and I think that's kind of what happens, and I don't want to get too much into politics on the show, but we all tend to look at, oh, well, this let's say this asshole got voted this season. Not necessarily talking about Trump. Not necessarily talking about, but you know, people tend to say that, like, if you don't like this guy, you don't like that guy. You're like, that asshole got voted in, and then he's doing these horrible things or these horrible things. How many of us in that position would really be much better? And that's not to say we would all make, you know, because there are some really horrible choices that are made by politicians and business leaders, and that's another discussion in of itself. But how many of us would really be better if put in that position? And I think we really need to understand that. The monsters of this world, I think that camera just cut off. The monsters of this world, we share a lot with them, a lot more than we tend to think about. Yeah. So we gotta understand that to bring balance. We fix this camera. Get it back up.
Look, we are all made out of the same 5 elements.
Exactly.
I think that
we all are.
Yeah.
Okay?
No, you're right.
Our DNA from the chimpanzees is only 1.23% different.
Yeah.
That's it. Okay? That is it. We all are made out of the same elements. We all have the gifts. We all have the gifts to be a saint or a serial killer.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
I like that.
You know, Deepak Chopra talks a lot about that.
Yeah.
And he said that, and he says, who are we to judge somebody else?
Yeah.
yes,
Right? We cannot be judgmental like that.
Yeah. No, you're right. You're right about that.
Yeah. We have to bring compassion.
Yeah.
And that's what I love about Easy Awakenings, because it's all about the compassion. It's all about the compassion. Yeah, we are not about judging.
We're not programming the next generation, our generation, the one that preceded it, to be well-rounded, mentally healthy, positive, energy forces, creative to contribute, because the synchronicity and the power of, you know, we can talk about Einstein, a Gandhi, a Mother Teresa. We can talk about power. I heard an interesting frame on it, and it resonated with me as accurate. All it is, it's a magnifying glass.
Yeah.
So if somebody was good at that level, they're going to be, that good is going to be brighter. But if somebody's bad and not generally, it has some contemptible things about them, give them that power, and that will...
Motion detected at the front door.
Well, I think this might be Steven. Cuz is here. Hold on a second.
Technology demonstration.
Someone is at the front door.
Come on downstairs, cuz. Can you hear me? All right.
So I think this is an amazing discussion. I mean, there's so much to consider here. And you know what I love about your experience, what you're sharing, the whole recovery.
Yes, you can come down. Keep going. I'm sorry. Keep going.
The recovery, that whole arena, to me, it takes so much courage.
It does.
Right? It takes so much courage.
Chewy alert.
to
Go upstairs.
It takes so much courage to say that, look, I have a problem, and I need help with that, and to use that.
Well, and not only
impetus to move forward.
And it's funny because once you get somebody wholeheartedly saying, "I need help," you gotta find a way to subtly guide them and let them understand the greatest is they're going to be their own biggest enemy. Is because they'll be taking it back, you know, and the I can't, we can. I can't, we can frame. But, you know, at the same way, that magnifying glass, an addict has went to such extremes that it can kind of amplify. But the problems we go through out on that edge of life and death is going on with the average person at a more subtle level. And you know, it was funny. One of the I heard the framework of the distinction between shame and guilt, and the advisor teacher in that case was saying guilt is good, and I hadn't heard that frame before. But if you've got the choice of either I'm bad or that behavior's bad, guilt is way better because it's starting to separate. You're creating your own perceptual separation of it, and the depth of where shame is costing us as a cohesive group who are alive and well here in 2019. Shame, it is so insidious. It's every bit as insidious as the C word. You know, we hear cancer and there's unanimous. Oh my God, we've got to fight this. We need to reverse how embedded shame is. It's taking creativity from the biggest cause of people not developing it is they've so removed it from their human experience they don't even have natural curiosity anymore, so it won't even happenstance get reopened.
Because you're afraid to expose yourself, and that's where the whole term of like, oh, I'm guarded, right? You become guarded, and you're afraid of other people judging you because you don't know how to deal with that judgment.
So you build those walls.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That is the root
then you imprison yourself.
Yep.
Because if other people can't get in, you can't get out either.
Exactly.
So
exactly.
That's self-imprisonment.
There's something I wanted to talk to you about. So we have a program. It's called the Breakthrough Zone. It's called the Breakthrough Zone. It's an interactive experience that really takes participants on a journey inward.
Okay.
And so we've created quite a few exercises. Some are a little more intricate than others. That take people on, like I said, on an introspective journey through interaction. Through environments that are tailored to take them inward, to take them through different experiences that really get them to take a look at themselves. I want to take this some like AA meetings. I think that would be kind of good.
Yes.
We could tailor one specifically for AA meetings. We do a lot with like schools and institutions and corporations. But yeah, I think AA meetings, we should we should come up with a few of those.
Well, yeah, and you use the label process. AA. 12-step is the 12 steps, the underlying fundamental for AA, NA, Overeaters Anonymous, Sex Addicts Anonymous, Gambling Anonymous, every compulsion that's manifesting, they're all using that framework. And that framework, it is what it is. It's got a lot of strengths. But since it's such a traveled route, the advantage is your audience, the people who already have, whether they've dabbled in it or they've been embedded in it, that thing we talked about, that curiosity, it's there. It's open. So your message will be heard and will be integrated in that way. I mean, it's sometimes, well, we could work with that existing structure or tear it down. Sometimes the only option is to be heard or to get the message through is
Yeah.
work with the existing, and that is such an
And I'd like to get you involved in that. I mean, if that's something you're
Yeah.
up for, we can talk about creating different programs. So,
Yeah.
and actually, my cousin just came here. Steve, you're an old Easy Awakenings classic. You want to bring the chair over? Let's find out where the best shot is. Just
Good.
watch the
Come on
cord.
then.
Watch
hey,
the cord.
pleased to meet you.
Pleased to meet you.
Yeah, there we go. Like those pants, by the way.
Thank you.
Bringing the are they green jeans?
They are.
I've never seen
I
green
like 'em.
jeans,
I like
but now I
green
want some
jeans.
green jeans.
You know, it's actually, I thought they were great because it's the emerald color.
You
and
have
it's
a
on
lot
my
of light
birthstone.
on you.
Oh, that's your birthstone.
Yeah, go green.
When's your birthday?
May.
Let me set this up. I don't want to screw up the lighting
Plus, I
situation.
love birthstones.
We'll introduce.
best.
I know.
You guys introduce us,
Hello,
Brian.
Hi,
This is
I'm
Brian
Brian.
Somerville.
Nice to meet you.
Hello, Raj.
How are you, Stephen?
I miss your coffee so much.
Aw. I know I made some the other day. I usually don't drink much coffee. Yeah, and I thought about you because you were like, "This is the best coffee I've had."
I want to know about this. I'm a coffee drinker.
I'm a coffee drinker. Nah, I spend a lot of time out in New York, and every day I will get up in the morning, go to the bodega, and get a fresh cup of Joe.
Okay.
It's fresh.
Yeah.
When I tasted her coffee, I
Yeah.
forgot about New York.
Ah.
Yes, excellent.
Yeah, because it grinds it right there.
Okay.
You put the beans in,
Yeah.
it grinds it, and
And
then
it was
it makes it
organic
fresh.
too, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, yeah,
And the sugar we used as well. It just tastes more healthier.
yeah,
Also.
yeah. I know. I brewed one cup, and then it took me like I drank it in three different times
Still tastes
because I
fresh,
can't.
bet.
Yeah.
Have you started drinking some coffee?
No, you know what? I just felt like drinking some,
Oh, okay.
and I thought about you. I'm like, oh, Stephen. I'm like, did it break?
No, I didn't break it.
Okay.
Just I didn't.
I'm like, yeah, Stephen just loved this coffee, so I'm gonna have some.
I appreciate it.
I love the smell of coffee.
Oh, me too.
Coffee smells fantastic.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I've never been a big fan of Starbucks though. I hear everybody go to Starbucks.
Yeah, everybody goes there.
Yeah, I had a friend who went to Starbucks one time, and she got something. I didn't understand the name of it, but dinner cost $12 for this one cup of coffee.
Isn't that ridiculous?
I could buy a whole meal at the grocery store for $12. You know?
I know,
It's
seriously.
a mocha frappa wappuccino.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think all these people. Look at Chewy. He's so happy with you. How are you feeling?
I'm pretty good.
Good.
She's off camera, by the way, folks, listening to the podcast. All right. There we go. How's that light Steven up? We want to get Steven well lit. That's better. That's better. Is that blinding you?
No, not at all.
No? Okay. All right. So let's see. Hopefully he doesn't throw off this camera too much, but I think we'll be good. All right. There we go. So we're continuing on. Everything's good. We got about 10 minutes. This camera. Okay, this one's still going. This battery might be running. Oh, 0 minutes. Oh, okay.
Did
All right.
it just run out?
Of that one, yeah. The good thing is that the audio's still going.
Let me move.
But here, it might need to switch memory cards. Let's see. Oh, it's still recording. 0 minutes.
So by episode 101, this will be handled by the assistant who he has coordinated. No, he's already automated. He won't have an assistant. He'll have
That's
more
right.
automated technology. And all of these dialogue will be in his stream of consciousness and not,
It's something good to laugh at one day.
yeah.
Yeah.
Here, let me see this. Let me see something.
But it's so much
You know when good energy comes together,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can literally move mountains.
It radiates.
Seriously, it's so powerful, right?
The whole
That's
aura.
where, just everything. You just cannot, determine where it's gonna go, how it's gonna go, who it's gonna reach,
So
how it's gonna help.
a series of books that were written as almost fable but had deep story under them, the Celestine books. Are you familiar with
Oh
that?
yeah, the
Brett
Celestine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was
Celestine
thinking of
prophecy.
that,
Yeah,
and then
yeah.
it went into the 10th insight and the 12th insight. And this
Yeah,
and that.
yeah.
But I was thinking of that because, in the recovery community, we sit in a circle. And one of my messages is if I'm not sharing at a treatment center, I'm at a place where people are really space and time running this a lot.
Yeah.
I talk about as a community, we need to make this a sacred circle. We need to discard our distractors in the process, and we need to, if necessary, just to get us all motivated, we need to put our red star on our forehead, a title on a thing. We're going to give everybody a title: sharers and carers. Because if you have a circle and there's 10 people, 90% of the time, you're going to have an opportunity to get outside of your mind. You're a compulsive, obsessive, self-seeking, missile, active addict trying to quit, right? And you're trying to learn how to be about others, and the therapeutic value of one addict helping another is unparalleled. Well, if my therapist is on their smartphone or doing A, B, and C while I'm sharing, I'm going to feel like I'm disrespected. But in the circle, the energy of the circle, if everybody puts their energy and we're all authentically there, and if I'm and I always give them the example because I'm a writer, so I'll be writing while they're talking. I'll be sub-vocalizing your words as you're sharing them. I'll be mirroring your physiology. I'll be getting all in. And if I end up sharing fifth and I have gotten all in for the last 15 minutes during those 4, by the time I go to share, it won't be whatever the part of me that wanted to impress others or do this or that. It'll be authentic. What's really on my gut, or what I really need to let go at that meeting. But the whole energy reminded me from the Celestine story. They talked about how we're battling for energy. Most human communications is a battle for energy. We think about the debate shows where they get people with the polar opposites and they're yelling over each other. So how can we and how can we learn to sense in a circle who's light bulbed at that point where we should silence for their message,
Well, I think a good way to start off is having the understanding and belief that is there.
Yeah.
Most people,
It's already there, yeah.
Most people deny what they already see.
Mm-hmm.
They see it every day. The hardest thing to show somebody something they've never seen before.
You're right. You're
So
right.
If they actually believe it from the first place, it'd be that much more easy to spot.
Like it's already happened.
Yeah, it's already been happening.
It's been happening. Yep. And that changes the emotional state, right?
Yeah, and the path that it goes, the direction it flows.
Because the emotions have
That rhymes. The path that it goes, the direction.
Because all energy has its own direction, has its own wavelength.
Yeah.
So you can actually deter where that's going to go.
Yeah.
It all depends on how you believe in it, how you see it. Your own truth.
But if we put it out into the future, like it will happen one day.
Well, you do speak things into existence, but you have to believe in that to be able to achieve that.
Stephen, by the way, you're gonna have to speak up a little bit.
Yeah.
You don't have a mic clipped onto you.
You got a mic.
Yeah.
Check one.
Yeah. Here, let's see what your audio levels are. With the video, the only thing it's recording is this camera right now, anyways.
It's funny, at an unspoken level, we try to do that a lot of times at a meeting. If we have two or three brand newcomers who we know are like fresh out of treatment or have never been to our meeting, we'll try to have a extend. When one person finishes, we're waiting for who's going to open up next, and we'll try to put our energy to get the newcomer to share early, so we'll know their story. Because the fundamental of that organization is the newcomer's the most important person at any table or at any meeting. And if we can get them to...
So you're the most important right now because you're the newcomer.
Yeah.
I actually came up with a theory that I actually do believe works.
Okay.
Most energy can be accessed through a positive way. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So let's say I came in and I said, you know what? I like your haircut and your shirt.
Mm-hmm.
You gotta
That
speak
can
up.
make you smile.
You gotta speak
if I like
up.
your haircut and your shirt, that can make you smile.
Yeah.
That alone will make you want to speak.
Yeah.
You may not speak about what we want you to speak at the
Sure.
moment, but it starts the conversation.
Yeah.
And the more you start talking, you get that fear, that nervousness off. Before you know it, you're already opening up.
Yeah.
Let's try to see. Well, hopefully that works to pick you up. You've been kind of low on the audio stream. Yeah.
I don't sound low in my own head.
Then maybe you just have to speak up.
Yeah, if you could, just speak up. We'll work on a third microphone. So sorry, listeners. The visualizers, they get to see your pretty face, but yeah, all right. And this battery on this thing is pooped out on us, so that's fine. We just won't be able to see it here, so we're good. We're good.
How long have you been going to meetings for?
I've been going to meetings for 20 plus years. I got introduced to it 33 years ago, but I've got 17 years clean. And the last 4 in active addiction were an insane race to the finish line. And thank God the finish line ended up with me still on planet 3.
Dig that.
Yeah.
I mean, so how do you consider yourself now? Do you consider yourself more healed, more refreshed? Do you consider yourself no longer addicted or tempted to have these type of things anymore?
Well, I consider myself more seasoned at recognizing my own patterns now. Yeah, and that's, we were talking about what educational programs we'd like to have, pattern recognition 101 is a good one, right? I can see myself coming. I more habitually have healthy habits going within. I practice, it's one of my teachers here, I practice yoga on a daily basis.
Oh, good. I feel jealous.
And, I realize obsessive doing and trying to be a better and better doer, and let me compress time and do more things than are humanly possible in the next 24 hours. These were my end goals. Right. And the irony was, even when it wasn't like a crazy achievement, like I'm doing incredible amounts of drugs in a short period, but even when I was achieving, there was no inner satisfaction because I wasn't whole from the standpoint of being. I was never comfortable in a present moment. I was always already mapping, from playing chess early on. I was always mapping next. And now I'm comfortable. I feel I'm consistently comfortable in most present moments. We could talk flight or fight, and you could hit me in my temple now, and I'd be knocked off course. We could still be off. But I feel when the next present moment opens, I'm gonna be present, comfortable, and able.
And aware of it.
Yeah.
Did you ever go? You never really battled with addiction too much, right?
Yeah, oh yes, I have.
Okay. Have you ever been to AA or NA?
I've been to both years ago. About 15 years ago, I actually went.
Okay.
It was a place off of, I think it was 9 Mile in Van Dyke. I went to. I think it was an AA at that point in time, and I wasn't drinking.
Trying to get you closer. There we go.
Picard is trying to shoot me. Picard. That's actually creepy. Yeah, I actually went to AA about 15 years ago.
Okay.
I was going for support of a friend. She had a bad drinking problem.
Sure.
And while I was there, they asked me to speak, and I didn't have their issues, but I still had issues of my own.
Yeah.
So I did speak.
Okay.
And I can say it does allow you to feel more refreshed leaving there than you did walking in there, regardless of whatever the issue is. And I didn't have to go to the STEP program, but I could sense myself having less regret leaving out of there.
Okay.
And I feel great about that.
Good.
And I did battle with drugs at one point in time as well.
Yeah.
I just didn't go to meetings for it. I just quit.
Okay.
That's a tough one. You quit cold turkey. I know the camera. We're going to work on this for 4 persons. We're on the fly. Also, my batteries on these screens have topped out, so it's like we're opening up Disney World, and every ride is kind of. We make sure that's off. Sorry, folks. I'm jumping up and down.
So this camera, is it recording?
It is. Yeah, that one's good. The thing is just the screens. The battery power is gone off.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Yeah, this one stopped recording. That's what happened. All right. This one's on a shorter timer, so yeah. All right. But the audio is still it's continuous, so it's not like it's not like we haven't the whole everything we've said is still it's still good. It's still on there. So yeah. Well, maybe this is a good time to wrap this one up. What do you guys think? What else? Anything else you want to talk about? Anything else you want to cover? Or?
Well, I just want to thank Brian for coming out and
appreciate the opportunity.
Sharing your story. I think that I learned a lot about you, and I'm sure our audience will get a lot of really great information for themselves.
We got into it pretty good. There were some really good discussions.
What's your favorite quote?
Let's
end with a quote.
I think you asked me that the last time.
Yeah. We can research it now if we have any issues.
Come on, favorite quote. not accessing it.
You know, so funny. If we had to ask that, he probably would have just said
The same thing last time.
You can pull on the spot. You guys just start thinking of everything else but what you
Okay,
already
that's okay if you can't. That's
What's my favorite quote? What's my favorite quote? That's my favorite.
What's my favorite quote? I don't know my favorite. There's so many, right?
What's some words to live by?
There we go.
There, that's good.
What do you want to
Grant
leave
me
people
the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference.
Amen.
Awesome. All right, guys. Well, I think that wraps it up for today's session.
Good stuff. Dude.
Thanks a lot. Awesome. Well, good.